Okay.
You good?
Mm-hmm.
My name is Julian Rachman. Today is April 30th, 2014,
Very good.
and
Welcome.
I'm ready to go. Thanks.
Okay. Tell me whatever you know about your family. Originally, how did they get to South Africa, if you know?
Yeah, so originally, my dad's father was actually born in Russia and had an arranged marriage, got married to a lady and my grandmother in Lithuania. So he moved from Russia to Lithuania, studied at the Vilnius Shiva in Vilnius. He was a rabbi, and the arranged marriage was in a small town about 80 kilometers from Vilnius, Breslov. And my grandfather was, his primary job was shchita, being a shochet, ritual slaughterer, and he worked for my grandmother's uncle. And how did he get to South Africa was, my grandfather was fairly direct, and him and his wife's uncle didn't see eye to eye, and he did not have a job in a small town, so he had to find something else, and he heard about South Africa, so he left, went to South Africa, got a position as a pulpit rabbi in the Cape, the little Karoo place called Langsburg, and earned enough money to send the family out several years later. This was in the early 1930s.
Mm-hmm.
I think the rest of the family came out about 1934 to Langsburg. That's on my dad's side, my patrilineal side. My mother's side, my mom and grandmother and grandfather were from Berlin. My mom grew up in Berlin till the age of 8, and they lived saw Kristallnacht. And my grandfather was working for a newspaper, and the Germans shut down the newspaper, had no work, so he'd heard about South Africa, just like the Lithuanian part of the family. They packed up, I think, on one of the last ships to South Africa in 1938.
Oh, wow. Okay. Just in time.
Just in time, absolutely.
So, tell us a couple of things about life growing up in South Africa. What was memorable to you?
So, I actually didn't grow up in South Africa. I grew up in Southwest Africa, in Namibia, which was at the time part of South Africa. It was a mandate to South Africa after the First World War. So life growing up in Namibia was actually, if you can imagine, almost seems Mark Twainish, very idyllic. No TV, had a shortwave radio, and very small, closed Jewish society that everyone knew everyone else, small, but 50, 60 Jewish families. My father was the rabbi of the town, and we knew everyone knew us, and everyone was like just one big family. Most of the people there were Lithuanian Jews, and everyone was kind of friendly with everyone else and spent all the Jewish holidays together, and Jewish life really surrounded the synagogue and functions and everything that was in Windhoek, which is the capital of Namibia.
Okay.
Wonderful, relaxing life. No stress.
Sounds great.
Oh yes, hot.
So, how and why did you make the decision to leave? At what point?
So in 1976, there was a riot in one of the black townships surrounding Johannesburg, in Alexandria Township, and I was sitting in my office. I just graduated from college, engineering, and I looked out the window and saw the smoke, didn't know what was going on, and heard about this riot, and I said to myself, I was unmarried at the time, and I thought I'd always wanted to leave South Africa and see the world. I never thought about not coming back, but I was very uncomfortable with apartheid, and I decided this is potentially the beginning of a major civil war. That day I actually made the decision, it's time to leave South Africa permanently. I never agreed with apartheid. I always felt uncomfortable. It was the wrong situation. The government was not following a path of agreement and working through segregation. And I decided then and there that it'll be a time of conflict. Now I thought it's time to leave. I don't agree with the situation, and time to move on.
So once you made your decision, what did your family feel about that? How did they take it?
My dad said, "Go as soon as you can." In fact, he quoted the Torah, and he said, "Lech lecha," which is
Yes.
leave your family, leave everyone, and go forth. So that was a decision to leave South Africa. So in the interim, I got married, and we spoke about going to America or Israel, and one of the two. So we went to first choice. My wife's first choice was Israel. My first choice was America. I had my best friend living in America that I went to high school and college with, and so wife always gets the first choice. We went to Israel, and the funny thing is, I tried to get a job in Israel. Well, first of all, we're going to go to Kibbutz Ulpan for 6 months, and so the Jewish Federation in South Africa set us up for Ulpan. We go there, and it was a group called Hashomer Atzeir, which eats, they raise pigs and they eat pork on the kibbutz, and I said, that won't work for a rabbi's son. So I immediately turned that one down. So I went to look for a job, and the engineers were on strike in Israel. I never heard of an engineer on strike in America, but the engineers were on strike. So we spent almost a month in Israel and packed up and came to America.
You said your best friend was here. Where
Yes.
was he or she?
He was at MIT, studying, getting his MBA and in Boston. So he was in America. We came actually to New Jersey to my wife's uncle, also a rabbi in New Jersey at the time, from South Africa. So that's kind of how we started in America.
How long did you stay there?
Too long. No, I'm just kidding. No, New Jersey's fine.
That's where my family's from.
No, we were in New Jersey for about 2.5 years.
And you found a job there? Found
a job there within about less than a week, and started working. We moved out to my wife's uncle within 2 weeks and started on our own, and worked there for about 2.5 years, and then moved to Texas.
Okay, so my question is, what brought you here, and specifically to Dallas?
What brought me to Dallas? Good question. Work in New Jersey, I didn't mind as much. My commute was 10 minutes to work. Claire went to teach about 14, 15 miles away, and the snow, and she just, New Jersey is basically a bedroom community for New York. Mm-hmm. So all the, my wife Claire, very social. People, they leave at 5 in the morning, don't come home till 9 at night. On the weekends they're exhausted. It's not a very social, people are very hardworking and very driven, and she just didn't feel that was the life for her. She wanted to be in a more relaxed city, something more similar to South Africa. So I looked around for another job, and found an ad in one of the trade magazines for Dallas. Came for an interview, and she hadn't seen Dallas, hadn't heard about Dallas, knew nothing about it, because everything kind of west of the Hudson is for the Hicks. So she said to me, "What's Dallas like?" I said, "Dallas is just like South Africa." She said, "We're going." So sight unseen, we packed up and came to Dallas in 1979.
By then, there were quite a good handful of South Africans
Yeah,
here.
about
Did you know
half a
anybody
dozen.
at all, or no?
We knew one person was Joan Vermont.
Mm.
In fact, we stayed with her the first week we were here before we found an apartment.
Okay.
Claire was very, very close friends with Joan's sister.
Sister, she told
Right.
me.
So that's how we kind of got together. In fact, Claire wore Joan's wedding dress. They traded wedding dresses for our wedding. So we all got back. It's like a small community. So there were a couple of South Africans at the time, and we were a little bit older than us. So age doesn't make a big difference. But at that age, I was 25, 26, and I think Joan and Boris were already in their 30s. Now they were a little bit older than us, more established. They already had a house. We were still living in an apartment. So that's kind of how we got a group of South Africans.
Yeah. And in what ways were others helpful to you when you first got here?
I think Dallas is a pretty easy place. I think once we settle down, you just find your own way, and we actually found Americans the Americans in Dallas, with close friends, the Sandgardens who lived across the street from us when we bought our house, and we've been friends ever since. Our kids grew up together, and they, we kind of, I'd say about half our friends are South African and half Americans, and they just, the Americans are just like interested in new friends. We worked together on the Jewish Federation campaigns, and we just got along great, but on a social basis, we try to be friendly. They had their friends, and they were not interested in expanding their horizons. I find that somewhat surprising, but very Southern, very friendly, very helpful. You could call them for help, but on a social basis, and expanding their social circle was not in their purview.
You've touched on it, but tell us some more about how you and your wife and your family got involved in the Dallas Jewish community specifically.
Well, on the one side, Claire, being a Hebrew teacher, she taught at Temple Shalom for 27 years at Beth Torah, so we got involved with the Jewish community. My late dad and my mom moved here in 1983, and he was the Torah reader for Sheretz Israel. We were members there at the time. So we were very involved. My dad was extremely involved. A lot of friends there. If you come and you're part of a community, you integrate very, very quickly. And so we got involved with the Jewish community on a significant basis. And then, as the Orthodox community grew, because we were Orthodox in South Africa, Shari Tefillah was one of the early members on the board there, and then helped establish Chabad. Did a lot of work for Rabbi Goldschmidt when he developed the shul in the north. So just been involved over the years on a multifaceted basis.
How would you describe your children's Jewish education?
That's a good question. It was not what I expected it to be. I was on the first board to establish Yavna, and it was a very small school. I wanted my kids to go there because I really felt they needed a high school Jewish education. I got that back in South Africa, but it was very small at the time. They were not, just couldn't get there, pique their interest. So it was. There was a kibbutz. They spent a couple of years at a kibbutz, Solomon Schechter, a year or two, but they all wanted to really be involved in public school. I think being children of immigrants, they didn't want to be in a small immigrant environment. They wanted to be with the rest of all the Americans. So it wasn't what I would have really liked. So I'm hoping for a whole lot better for my grandchildren.
How old are your children now?
My oldest is 32. And my youngest is 26.
Are they here or where?
My oldest daughter's in Indianapolis. My youngest son is in Indianapolis, also with her. He's living with her part-time. And then my oldest son is in San Francisco, he'll be finishing, coming back to Dallas in May. And then my youngest daughter is in New York.
Wow, spread all over.
Spread all over, but one's
Typical
coming back.
American kids.
One's coming back to town, so
okay,
that's good.
Are you hoping maybe a few more will decide to come back here?
My daughter who moved to Indianapolis said she's not coming back. She loves it there. My daughter moved to New York, said she loved New York so much she'll never move back. So I don't know.
Right.
You never know. Never say never, but yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. Can you think of some Jewish cultural traditions that you have maintained from home that you brought with you here, perhaps that are different from what other people would do?
Cultural
Jewish,
or
yeah.
religious.
Religious.
Yeah, that are brought from home. I observe all the chagim, so I don't work on any of those holidays, and that's kind of pretty strong South African thing that taking 2 days from work. Very few people do that, and I pretty much stuck to that. We have the big cultural thing is we're big on celebrating the holidays together, Rosh Hashanah and Pesach, and so for instance, Pesach we had 31 people for the Seder, and we love having the kids. We make a whole, not a big production, but we make it where it's fun and lots of food and lots of education and lots of singing, and that's a really big thing. The Jewish holidays mean that's kind of what we live for. We work so hard in America that having Shabbat on the holidays are very important.
Very good. How important was Israel to you growing up in South Africa?
Paramount importance. That was Israel. We all was always focused in our psyche. I wasn't big on immigrating to Israel, and I'm not sure why. It was always there, and had a strong affiliation with Israel. And I remember the days hearing about one soldier get killed, and you feel the pain as a Jew. So very strong Zionistic feelings in South Africa when the October War broke out. First thing us young guys did at college was go out and campaign for the war. You'd go collect money and blood drives, and those who'd already finished college volunteered. So very, very strong affiliation with Israel.
Has that carried on here?
Not as strongly, because America you feel that America supports Israel. You don't feel that the way South Africa, that each individual in South Africa has supported Israel. So,
you said your parents came here. What about any other friends or family that have followed you here?
my sister followed me. I only have one sister, and then my wife's sister followed us to. She's in Washington D.C. So,
how soon after did they come?
My sister came 3 years after. Well, no, it was 3 years. It was 1 year after we arrived in Dallas. She followed right after me, and because she had a place to come to. And then my wife's sister, probably 2 years later, moved to Washington D.C.
What about Claire's family? Anybody on her side come here as well?
No, that's Claire's
besides
sister.
the sister. What about her parents or extended family?
Parents came for a short while, but Dad had medical difficulties, and the medical in America without a job and everything was very difficult. So he moved back to South Africa.
Okay. So since immigrating here,
Mm-hmm.
you said how has your family grown?
Religiously, physically,
Actually, numbers-wise.
Numbers-wise. Oh, since we are all 4 of our kids are Texans, so we have 4 kids and son-in-law and grandson. So we're gone from
Right.
2 to 7,
Hundreds.
8, to 8, yeah.
This might be tough, but what, if anything, do you miss about life in South Africa?
What, if anything?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question. I don't actually miss anything. The only thing that I really appreciated was that everyone lived in the same city. Your family, your children, your uncles, your aunts. There was a lot of, I would say, family pressure or peer pressure, but in a good way, in a very positive way. You don't have that. In America, it's very fractured. I don't miss it because I didn't live there long enough at my age or through my adult years to. But I think I miss that because I think that's very important. Family is very important in having that circle. And the other thing is going to college. Your kids just pack up at 17, 18 and they go to college versus everyone went to college and stayed at home. That sense of closeness and family and tradition and upbringing. I think some of the social issues that my kids have experienced and difficulties through those late teenage years at college was a result of not being part of a strong family. You're only connected by a telephone as opposed to coming home every day and being part of the family, having meals together and holidays. I think they got their freedom too early, and it's just I think that's one of my regrets. The family and parental influence was cut off pretty quickly, right at college time.
Have you returned to South Africa to visit?
Sorry about this.
Okay.
Several times, not many, about 3-4 times in the last 30 years.
And what was it like? Do you remember? Describe what it was like to go back.
Oh, it was wonderful. It's just, it's very nostalgic, and I took my mom on a trip in 1995 back to Namibia, and we went to the cemetery and saw a lot of old friends that had been buried there, and a lot of nostalgia, and seen the old synagogue, and a couple of other friends that still live there. Very few, about 6 Jewish families live in Namibia now. It's very small. So that was a wonderful trip, and we were with family. We went over Pesach, so we spent time with my wife's sisters who were still there, and it was my late aunt and uncle were still alive. So we are really, every time we've been back has been
Positive.
Nicer than the time before. Just wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good. I'm not sure everybody can say that, but that's very good. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Can I just go? Can you
Go
put on
ahead.
hold for a second?
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay, so last couple of things.
Sure.
First of all, are you officially a U.S. citizen?
Yes.
Okay. And what does that mean to you?
What it means to me is, I think it's one of, putting being Jewish aside, which I think is the ultimate, the most important thing, but being an American citizen, what America stands for is probably the most unique concept in the world. Whereas if you were in England, being a Jew, you'd never really ever be an Englishman, because an Englishman is a member of the Church of England, and it's part of the religion. A Frenchman has got history with them, and a German is a German. But in America, everyone's an American. You stand not for nationalism, but for an ideal of justice and equality, and kind of what the French revolutionary writers wrote about but never accomplished. And I think that's what America stands for. And it's a unique country that I don't think has ever existed in this world, both from a cultural standpoint, a economic standpoint, because it's built very strongly on merit and meritocracy and the system of government. So to me, being an American citizen, I tell most Americans they don't know how proud they can be of being American. It's a wonderful place, and the best part about America is how much they support Israel. That to me is, you know, in fact, two of my partners are very religious Christians, and they believe part of America's success has been their support of Israel. They think it's all tied in. I don't disagree with them. I think everything's intertwined. So being an American is a wonderful thing. It's a very fortunate thing.
We need to get a paid advertisement of you
really?
saying
No,
that.
it's true.
It'd be great.
I love America. It's a wonderful country. We're wonderful people, and just what we do, you know, people who are tsunami victims, and you know, for everyone in this world, to bring in refugees, and it's very unique. That's on the one side. On the flip side, capitalistic. You work hard and you prove yourself. There's no giveaways. It's not very trying to make it more socialistic, but it's a tough country. That's I've found when you come into this country, you have to work hard and prove yourself. Otherwise, you get nowhere. It's not a country built on handouts and on mediocrity. You know, just being, you know, some of the Russian families that I've helped being, you know, whatever, just do the minimum to get by. Doesn't fly in America. So it's a great place. It's, you know, and I'm a capitalist, not with a socialist bent, but you know.
Lastly, on a personal note, tell us why, I believe you are, glad that you came here.
Why am I glad that I came here? Well, several reasons why I'm glad. The first one is managed to extricate myself from apartheid. I just didn't feel that I could live in a country and support something that was that wrong. So the move to leave it wasn't the shock that made me move. Wasn't the reason I moved. That civil war wasn't the reason I moved. The reason I moved wasn't the right place to be, and I didn't see the long-term future in South Africa. And the other one was America being the place it is. Always wanted to, as a kid, wanted to come to America, not necessarily permanently live here, but to spend 5 to 10 years and just see the country and experience. You know, I'd always followed American politics, and America's a global power and is always involved in the Cold War and just Watergate and all these things that happened over here that presidents don't act appropriately. There's a way to get rid of them. It doesn't happen anywhere else. So it's pretty unique.
Well, we're glad your 10 years has expired, but you've chosen to stay on. So
I didn't have any way.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the interview. Very
Thanks,
much, Julian.
Joe. I appreciate it.
Okay.